Welcome, everybody, to the Baseball Blueprint Podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game. Today's episode is brought to you by Valley Sporting Goods. Thank you again to the Baseball Blue Book Network for partnering with the show. Today's guest is a special friend of mine. This is Joey Romence. Joey is the director of BSF Pitching at Bodum Columbus, has done some really cool stuff, and I'll let him kind of dig into his background and his story. But we're going to touch on some pitching. We're going to touch on some youth collegiate professional development on that side. And Joey, take it away. Give us a little bit about your background here.
Yeah, Cody, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. I started as soon as I got done playing in 17, I got right into coaching. I was in the private sector for a while. We had a facility up here in Kalamazoo, Michigan called Hardball Fans. So I'd work out there for 2 or 3 years, and then I got offered the pitching coach position at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. I was there for 2 years. And then went in 23, I went to Miami University as a director of pitching development. From there, went last year, was at PRP Baseball in Noblesville, Indiana, and now I'm at the Bodum with BSF. So
Yeah, man.
kind of been around.
Awesome journey too. And we've had a lot of coaches here with junior college experience. And I always love asking, what were some of the larger contrasts between that level and then your work at Miami?
Yeah, man. So I think the just the different athlete you're working with. I think on that staff we had IU transfers, that IU kickbacks, or we had guys that probably just picked up a baseball maybe 4 years ago, man. So I think it's a wider range of athlete you're working with there. And then you get to Miami, and it was from the top to the bottom, man. They were good arms there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you talk about that range of arms, and that's a lot of what you do now with BSF. What's been the biggest learning curve for you coming from collegiate space into now you're broadening your horizons with working with, players from 8 to, 29 years old with our pro guys that come in?
Yeah, I think just your messaging. Obviously the messaging with a pro guy or a college guy is not going to be the same as what you will with an intermediate or a youth athlete. So I think just understanding how you portray that message and how you get that message across is completely different, man. And I think number one, just understanding that athlete again, whether they are 9 or 10 years old or whether they're 30 years old and playing in pro ball. I think getting to know them first and understand how they tick, I think that's super important.
It's so good, man. And I've seen you work with the guys, um, and one of my favorite pastimes between lessons is to come watch you do your stuff. I'm always learning something, but even beyond that, the delivery. That's what I'm looking for most of all. Is like, hey, how is this guy communicating with these guys? Because um, it's to the point now where I'm starting to recognize there's a simplicity in how you're presenting the information that comes from the depth of your knowledge of the content. And so for those of us who are maybe learning that pitching side of things, and we're seeing some stuff, can you touch on maybe some of the newer, I'm going to say trends and fads. This is not the right way to say this, but trends
Yeah.
and fads that people are getting into, i.e. like water bags and plyo care, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So any given day, guys will, as soon as they finish up their pre-throw soft tissue work, we'll jump right into the water bag. And to be honest with you, man, I think it's been out there for a while. I want to say I got my hands on it first when I was at Miami. We used it a few times down there, and then when I was at PRP last year, we used it almost every day, man. And I really got to see the gains from with certain guys. It just exposes a lot of the deficiencies within the delivery. And so it's stabilizing the water that's in the bag, and you're going through different sets of drills, man, and it's good. Like you've seen, we use it every single day. We'll blend that with guys plyos. Maybe it's 2 to 4 reps on the water bag and go right into plyos, and you'll see the deficiencies clean up pretty quickly.
That's so awesome, man. That's so awesome. And I know a lot of our hitting guys are starting to implement that as well. And so from that standpoint, are you looking for certain, you're talking about stabilizing in terms of controlling the water and the movement. Are you looking for anything visually in terms of like front leg bracing or a caving of a certain body part to where you're like, okay, we can work on this in a different space?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the lead leg block, I've always thought about the lead leg block as it should happen naturally. Um, Now there are, I guess, you know, you see today like guys are training that lead leg block. But yeah, man, I've always been under the umbrella of like it should happen naturally. So everything before the lead leg block, if it's sufficient, it should block out. Unless there's whether it be a mobility issue, a strength issue, something along those lines. But I guess to answer your question, man, no, I look from the ground up, right? So it's let's start at the feet and go up the chain that way. Again, with the water bag, you'll be able to see some of those deficiencies pop out right away, or even on the velo belt as well.
That's awesome, man. And so we talked about the range of ages you're working with. Are there certain tools that you're going to only use for certain age groups, or when do you start implementing, let's say, like plyo care balls or even the water bags? Is that from youth ages to professional?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the water bags you're able to use. Now, obviously, given the weights,
Yeah,
the more water you put in, the heavier it's going to be, right? So, you know, youth athletes, we're going to take a little bit of the water out. The velo belt usually start at 14 or the high school level, unless you have like that outlier eighth grader who's a specimen on the
yeah.
mound, right? You mix that in with them, but plyo balls, same thing, man. I think intermediate, seventh, eighth grade can start. But the plyo balls, man, it's an arm patterning tool, right? So, I'd like to make sure everything is sequenced properly first, or at least have for the younger athletes have good throwing mechanics.
Interesting, interesting. So when you're going through those plyo balls, because again, as someone who slightly dabbled in the pitching space, like it wasn't super
Mhm.
heavy. My headspace was these plyo balls are going to make me throw harder, right? And so,
Yeah.
so when I hear you talk about it, you talk about arm path and cleaning up inefficiencies, and yes, I'm sure that can build velo too. But it seems to me you're almost speaking of it as a like an injury prevention type method where you're cleaning up deficiencies. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean it's all arm path too. Everything's a tool, right? And then how do we use that within the daily programming? But yeah, speaking of plyo specifically, we can do like there's certain times where we can do a plyo velo for 4 weeks, let's say, and with hopes of like let's bump up the velo tick a little bit. However, everyday use, yeah, it's going to be more of a arm patterning tool.
Wow. Wow, that's so good. So, in your experience now, because the amount of tech we have for that space is incredible. Do you have any like, hey, here are my favorite technologies to use in this space?
Yeah, I think for bullpen specifically, it's got to be the TrackMan, right? It just tells us so much. As soon as the baseball leaves our hand, that nothing else outside of Hawkeye can do, right? And I think for our space, TrackMan Portable is the best thing out there. The other thing would be the Edgertronic camera. So then when you pair those two together, you get the slow mo view of the hand, and then outside, any measurements as soon as the baseball leaves, man, it's the best.
So you talk about that extra stuff that TrackMan picks up. Are we talking about seam shifted wake? Is that am I on the right path here?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, there'll be a seam shift wake thing. There's obviously your horizontal vertical breaks there. You got your spin rates, all that.
That's awesome. Interesting. So when you're going through this stuff, and again for the layman, because this is something where I'd say the majority of people haven't had access to something like that. Can you give us
Hmm.
a slight view into what seam shifted wake is, like the layman's version? Um,
Yeah, so essentially it's so as soon as the baseball leaves your hand, if you're thinking about it on a trajectory, right? It's a straight trajectory from the hand to the end target. It's how much break is that ball. I wish I had a baseball with me right now, but essentially it's how much break is coming off of that trajectory. So if you think about it like the smooth side of a baseball. Again, different grip variations and whatnot. So let's speak for like a sinker, right? Right. So if we can get that smooth side of the baseball up on top of the baseball, that the air will essentially push that baseball down. And that's where you get the seam shift weight.
Interesting. When you're trying to craft a pitch that involves a little bit more of that seam shift, it seems to me almost like it plays better for like pitches that fade, like sinkers, changeups, stuff like that. Would you
Yeah,
would you use that concept for like a slider or anything like that?
well, so here's the thing with seam shift wake is like it doesn't make sense for everybody. So, that's where you get into like guys who are heavily supinators, and can't
These are
necessarily
guys that
pronate.
cut the ball, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And guys can't pronate, right? That's where you'll mix in. Okay, is this guy suitable for a seam shift sinker, right? And then usually, you'll look right at the fastball efficiencies levels. If it's below, I don't 87, 88% efficiency. If it's below that, guy's probably a supernator, right? So then make a couple grip adjustments, just depending on where hand slide is, and then that's where the edgertronic comes into play. Man, is like you'll be able to see exactly the certain grip adjustments you'll need to make.
That's so interesting. And you look at any kind of like development league in terms of minor league baseball, right? And you're always seeing like they have the quad fields at pretty much every site, but there's always an edgertronic on that field.
Hmm.
And you can see the value there because those things are not inexpensive, right?
No,
But they're willing to make that move on
absolutely.
essentially the lowest level of their development, which is really impressive in terms of like, hey, we're really going to focus on this. So it tells you the value of the tool. So when you're doing that pairing, do you just take, okay, here's our, and most of those fields have Hawkeye 2 or TrackMan. Are you just pairing that data with the film? And then in terms of a teaching session, do you just sit them down in a classroom, say, hey, here's what we're seeing out of this release action?
Yeah, absolutely. Or to be honest with you, man, like if it's a pitch design session or a bullpen, we'll do it right there on the spot in between pitches because that feedback is literally instant, right? So soon as the data's up, maybe 2 seconds later, the Edgertronic camera video's up as well.
Wow,
So we can turn the iPad around and literally slow down the video. And yeah, like if we need to make adjustment right then and there, we'll do that.
that's awesome, dude. That sounds fun. So
Yeah.
talk to me more about these pitch design sessions. Can you walk us through what one of those would look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, again, man, it's all unique to the individual, right? So, it's I heard this term when I was at Miami, man, and credit to Jeff Opalewski. That's who was the head pitching coach there. Over the rubber pens or over the plate pens. Over the rubber pens, we're not going to care about execution, right? We're going to care about number one, whether it be mechanics, whether it be a pitch design session, right? Where yeah, if we're gonna introduce a new slider and we're not executing it really well. Are we that worried about it right now? Are we, you know what I mean? So, and then over the plate pens would be strike execution, um, you know, any sort of, high intent pen, whereas, chaos pen, if you will. So that number one, unique to the individual. And then number two, again, if we're integrating a seam shift sinker, it's going to be, um, what makes sense for that guy's profile. So we'll look at the profile in the TrackMan. Okay, what makes sense for him? Where do we want this break at? Do we want more vert to it? Add more horizontal to it? Stuff like that, man. I mean, that's where it makes it so fun.
Yeah, man. And so you look at all the data that kind of gets spat out with that tech. And one of the things that people love to look at is release height. Can you
Hmm.
talk to us about how release height and I guess ball flight kind of play together?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the major factors and components in vertical approach angle, right? And VAA is again something I learned. Like the amount of resources you have at here goes back to your junior college question. The amount of resources you have at a junior college and compared to Division One program, man, it's unbelievable. So vertical approach angle, man, it's especially on the heater. That's where release height comes into play. Guys with lower release heights are going to have a higher VAA, right, or a steeper VAA. So up at the zone plays a lot better than down at the bottom of the zone, right? And same thing, guys that have a tall release height probably can be better at the bottom of the zone.
Interesting. And so conventionally, you think about tall pitchers trying to throw the ball up, right, for swing and miss stuff.
Yeah,
And now we're recognizing with VAA, like your swing and miss numbers are actually better as a taller guy when you play at the bottom part of the zone. And then as a
absolutely.
lower guy, you play at the top. That's so interesting. Wow.
Absolutely, man. It's crazy because it's like 5 years ago, it's like, you're watching the game on TV and you see guys, it's like, man, how don't they hit that, right? But now, with the information you start to learn, it's like, okay, here's why.
Yeah. Yeah, geez, man. Okay. So let's dive into more of your journey here. Uh,
Yeah.
Giving us a little bit of background in terms of you as a player, right? Where'd you play? How long? What impact did that have on how you are as a coach now?
Yeah, I played 2 years at Glen Oaks Community College, which is in Centerville, Michigan, and then 2 years at Spring Arbor University, which is in Spring Arbor, Michigan, just outside of Jackson, Michigan. Um, yeah, and like I told you earlier, just got right into coaching after that. But I truly think, man, I had a coach my junior year, Sam Riggleman, who, man, I owe him a lot. Just the way kind of I shaped out after college. To be honest with you, man, I learned so much from him. And you know, he's more of an old school coach, but he, as long as you can kind of implement today's newer age, right, and still have some old school tactics, man. That's kind of where I'm at with things. I learned a lot from him. There's still a lot to this day that I use from him. Um, just while obviously implementing the newer technology and newer verbiage, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, I dig it. I dig it. So on that note, who are some guys that have kind of helped sculpt your career from a coaching standpoint? Who are some guys that you look to and say, man, he's done a lot for me?
Yeah, I would say number one, man, is Jeff Opalewski. Like I talked about him earlier, he was at Miami with me, and he is now the pitching coach at UNLV. But I owe him a lot, man. I truly do. I think you know technically my role at Miami was off the field coaching, so I couldn't do any on field coaching, but I knew that wherever I want to go in this, right, whether it be a college or pro side of the game, I need to go learn, right, and when I talked with him and was presented that opportunity to go down to Miami, man, it was a no brainer, to be honest with you. I knew it was a year off the field, but I knew it was also a year to learn under who I consider one of the best coaches in the game, man. He um, just whether it be sitting in his office and picking his brain for 30 minutes or outside and seeing how he interacts with the guys, I thought um, it was unbelievable, man. So, and then everybody I got to learn from at PRP was great too. Those were two guys there that were more on the pro side of the game. So, yeah, just mixing those two, man. But Coach Oat, man, I owe him a lot.
That's
So,
awesome, dude. That's awesome. Well, okay, so let's dive into what we're doing now here with BSF. Can you give us a little background into the BSF group? How you guys
yeah.
operate within the Bodum structure and stuff like that?
Yeah. BSF started 2 years ago in the Lockport facility in Illinois, branched up to Bensonville, and then started in Columbus here in August. So, yeah, man, guys will come in. They have 5 or 6 parts depending on where they're at with things in their daily programming. They'll come in, get a soft tissue work in their mobility work, and then they'll go into a pre-throw isometric. They'll go into J bands, and then they'll go into a med ball phase, um, the core velo belt and water ball, like we've talked about, and then go into their plyos and throwing program for the day, with whatever that may be, kind of depending on where they're at with their programming. Um, After that, they'll recover, and then they'll go work out. So it's good, man. It's a true player development, system and atmosphere, man. I think that's what's been so great about it is everybody's on the same page and everybody has one goal in mind.
Well, and it's so cool too, watching from the outside in. Anyway, like I see how you work with your professionals, right? And the process that they come in is very very similar. It almost mirrors what you're doing with these younger guys in terms of the structure of the practice plan, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's really important for them to recognize too. Like there is an order of operations that works best for most people. Now, not everyone's the same,
right.
but the way you're presenting that information is really 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 good, because then they can see those professionals do it the same way and they're like, wow, okay, so we're on the right path here.
Yeah,
Wow, 'cause
yeah,
there's question
absolutely.
marks there sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure, man, and it's good, when pro guys can't make it in at the pro hours, they come in, during the high school hours, if you will, and then it gets a chance for those guys to see okay, here's what it takes to get to that level, right? And just seeing how those guys operate, man, it's really good for those kids.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, Joey, putting yourself in the role of let's go a mentor to these young players who are wanting to get a chance at the next level, whether that be college, whether that be professional. Can you give us three pieces of advice that you would share to them? And this is on the spot, so I apologize.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'd say number one, man, is leave it all out there, like with whatever you're doing, right? Don't have any regrets at the end of the day. And I know that's cliche, and I know that's, but it's the truth, man. I think you'll be able to sleep a lot easier at night if you know you gave it 100% with whatever that is, right? And then number two, golly, yeah, you threw me right on the spot.
All right, buddy.
Let's see. Number two, you know, have fun with it. I
Yep.
think that's important too. Don't let it become don't dread coming into the facility to work out, man. I think um, I think number one, it creates a great atmosphere having 40 guys in there all having a good time, right? But also, you want something to look forward to do. Yeah. And number three, man, is just stay confident whatever you do. I think that's confidence is the biggest key right now, and I think preparation leads to confidence. I think confidence leads to success. So, um, yeah, those
Sweet,
those
dude.
three things, man.
Wow, wow, dude. Okay, so that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. I know just from talking with our players that are dual guys, especially, right? A lot of the questions that I have for them when it comes to their throwing for the day, like, have you talked to Joey about this? Like, what are your plans there? So for those guys who are dual guys, now that that's probably starting to become a little bit more valuable with the roster limitations that we're seeing, what advice do you have to them for taking care of their arm, what to prioritize, stuff like that?
Yeah, you only have one arm, man.
Yeah,
You only have so many bullets in the chamber, right? So, just keep in mind that. I think, I know some of the dual guys that we've worked with, right? Where are we with our programming, right? And what do we need to prioritize? Are you going to have a heavy day out on the field today with infield, or are you guys going lighter with just glove work, whatever it is? We'll get the throwing in here. So just be smart about it, man. I mean, truthfully, you really do only have one arm and one career, man. So we want to maximize that to the fullest.
that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. All right, Joey, last one for you here. And I usually ask this one at the end of the podcast. If you had three things to tell yourself coming right out of college in terms of just guidance and advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I'd say number one, man. Just be an open book. Be willing to learn. I think that's the biggest thing. There's so much information out there, man, and most of it good, some of it bad, whatever it is, right? But also, um, you know, take it. You know, I guess the biggest thing would be find out what your principles are within your system, and kind of dissect the information from there
Yeah.
would be number one. Number two, man, would be I guess this would be one that I've like we talked early on today is just understanding the athlete. I wish I would have done that earlier in my career, rather than just be a because I said so coach. That's I think my first year at Kelms Valley, that's kind of where I was, right? Is um, do this right because I said so, and quickly found out number one, that's no way to relate to an athlete, and also um, you kind of take a step back and say, okay, why aren't we getting results, and why aren't guys responding? Here's why, right? So
Yeah.
that's number two, man. Number three, I think again, just have fun with it, whether it be pertains to a coach as well. I think um, the more fun you can have in that atmosphere with guys, man, it's a great time out there. So
That's awesome, dude. Well, Joey, that was a blast, man. I'll tell you what, and we talked about this before, but I always learn something when you're talking, and I know from an information delivery standpoint, uh, I in my opinion, there's no one better. You do an incredible job with that. You relate to your players in a really really special way, and so for those guys who are interested in finding Joey, make sure you check out the Baseball Blue Book app. It's free. His information as well as BSF Columbus will be in there. You'll be able to find a website, sign up for lessons, get involved with him. If you're a professional guy, make sure you check him out too. He's got great stuff. And again, thank you to the Baseball Blue Book Network for partnering with the show. Thank you to Valley Sporting Goods and Joey. I know we got a lot out of you this episode. So thank you so much, man. This has been a blast.
Yeah, Cody, thanks for having me, man. I love the platform you're building here, and watch a lot of episodes, whether it be interviews or your talk on infield stuff, and even the infield kind of roundtable you
Yeah,
do, man. It's all great work, and really really happy with the stuff you're building over here. So thanks for having
I
me.
appreciate it, Joey. I appreciate it. All right, y'all. We will catch you next episode. Thanks for watching.